Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to do this. So before I get started, I just want to preface this by saying this tutorial is a little bit more intermediate than most of my other tutorials have been. So I just want to make it clear that I'm not going to be able to walk through every single button you need to be clicking on. I am kind of assuming that if you're doing this effect, you have a little bit of knowledge over how to use After Effects. So I'm sorry if I went as in depth as I do for some of my beginner tutorials. This video would probably be 3 hours long. With that in mind though, I will leave a download to my project file in the description so that if there's anything that isn't made clear in the video, you can always just open up my project file and take a look for yourself. So the first thing to understand is that most of this project just boils down to these shape layers. I have 3 of them that are just the lines. You can see when I scrub forward, there's 1 line, 2 line, and now 3 lines. So there's just 3 shape layers that correspond to those lines. And then there's 3 more that control the circles. You can see, if you pay attention, there's 1 circle that closes in, another one, and then another one. So really all this effect is manipulating those shapes. So first, I'm just gonna very quickly go over how to create each one of these unique shapes with the tools in After Effects. So here I am in an empty composition with a white background just to make it easy to see. To create the lines, just select the pen tool while not having any other layer selected, and then draw this elongated Z shape. And you'll see that creates a line that kind of gets thinner towards the center, and you can adjust these points around to get it to look the way you want it to. Then you can use the anchor point tool to move the anchor point towards the center point of that line, or you can just press Ctrl-Alt-Home to move the anchor point to the center of that layer. Now you can see that if I alter the rotation value, the line spins around that center point, which is what we want. To create the circle, once again, just make sure you don't have any layers currently selected, and then hover over the tool that is to the left of the pen tool. While hovering over this tool, hit Q until it gives you the ellipse tool. Then hold Shift and click and drag to create a perfect circle. Then at the top where it says Fill, click on the blue text and set the fill to be transparent. Then click on the actual stroke blue text and you'll have a couple of options for the stroke. Select Radial Gradient. Then after you do that, click on the little image to the right of that text and you'll be able to actually edit the radial gradient to look the way that you want. There will be this slider here and you may have to adjust it to line up with the edge of your circle in order for your gradient to look for the way that you want it to. I had to do this in my case. Also, an additional adjustment you may need to make in order to get the color right is to do what I'm doing here and grab this location slider and drag it to the right. Now I'm just going to show very quickly the process of me creating this circle and then just lining it up with the actual clip of Gojo. You don't have to line it up to be exactly the same as the anime like I did. It would still look good if you just kind of freestyled it. But for the sake of this tutorial, I just wanted it to look exactly the same as it's in the anime. So I actually lined it up frame by frame, but you don't have to do that. So as you can see here for this first circle, I'm just creating that gradient circle that I just showed you how to make. And then all I'm doing is lining it up with the center of the effect, and I'm adjusting the scale of that shape layer. So for the second circle, I just went to the very first frame that I wanted that second circle to appear, and then just simply duplicated my first circle layer by hitting Ctrl-D. Then I hit S to open the scale options and clicked on the stopwatch to just completely clear all of the scale keyframes from the previous layer. Then on this new shape layer, click on its drop-down menu, then click Contents, and then there should be an ellipse option, and you should be able to reverse the direction of the ellipse path by dragging this amount slider to the negatives. Then go back to your gradient editor from earlier and reverse the direction of the opacity on the top black and white gradient. Then also grab the white end and drag it closer to the black end to make the gradient dissipate faster. As you can see, it's no longer covering the entire screen. Then, similar to how I did the first one, I just lined it up with where I wanted it to be and then keyframed the scale so that it got smaller, a little bit out of sync. with the first one. Again, I chose to line it up perfectly with the anime, but it would look fine too if you just did it on your own. Then by duplicating the first ring again, create a third ring. Then I animated the scale of the ring to go down as usual. After doing that, I opened up the gradient stroke settings that you see here, and it made it to where the endpoint of the gradient increased as the scale of the circle decreased to create the effect that you see here. Additionally, I made this circle darker and adjusted the gradient a little bit more to mimic the effect from the anime. Then with all of these effects combined, you can kind of see the effect coming together here. The basic foundation has been laid. Also, one thing I forgot to note real quick is to just make sure to turn this on and then to check these boxes for all of your shape layers, and that'll enable motion blur. So you can see now they're getting like blurred as they move. So aside from the shapes themselves, there's also some adjustment layers that need to be applied as each ring closes. As you can see here, when the first ring closes, all of the area around it becomes desaturated. And the second ring closes and applies a red filter, and then the third ring closes and applies grain. We're going to need to create all of these adjustment layers that do these separate things and then mask them around those circles. So we start by creating a new adjustment layer. I apply a hue and saturation effect to the adjustment layer and then turn the saturation all the way down. Then hide this layer. Then I create a circular mask with the ellipse tool by selecting the ellipse tool while having the adjustment layer selected. And then I line up that circle with the first ring. Then I keyframe the mask expansion from 0 towards negative values so that the effect will begin collapsing in on pace with the same speed as the ring. Then we essentially perform the exact same technique on the second ring. We just create another adjustment layer, and instead of applying a desaturate, we apply another hue and saturation with the Colorize option selected. You can see my settings here. And other than that, it's the exact same methodology as before, just use the negative mask expansion to make that effect collapse in on pace with the second ring. So for the third one, I'm using the exact same negative mask expansion technique, but this time we're going to be applying turbulent noise to the adjustment layer. After applying the turbulent noise, I apply a levels effect and then mess with the input black and input white values in order to make the black parts of the turbulent noise pop out a lot more. Then I change the blending mode of this layer to multiply. And then I apply a fastbox blur effect to the noise and blur it. As you can see, this now creates a transparent kind of grain globbiness on the camera similar to the original effect. If you want to see the exact settings I ended up using for all of these, I'll post them up on the screen now. Also, if you want this grain to like move around at all, then you're going to need to go to your turbulent noise effect and click on the stopwatch next to this effect called evolution, and then put the first keyframe at the beginning of your clip, drag your playhead all the way to the end of your timeline, and then just turn up the evolution to some number. You can see how much I did it here, but just tweak it to look however you want. And the more evolution that you have, the more that this will like move around over time. To create the actual energy ball, you're gonna need to download a After Effects plugin called Saber. It's completely free. It's very easy to install. I'll have the link in the description. Start by creating a new solid and then apply the Saber effect to it. Then open the render settings dropdown and change the composite settings to transparent. Then open customize core and change the core type to layer masks. When you do this, the Saber path will follow any masks that you currently have on that solid layer. So just create another circular mask using the ellipse tool, and that will create a circular Saber core. Then you can pretty much just go crazy and adjust all of these settings however you want. You probably are going to need to turn the core size up, but just play with these settings until your red energy ball looks the way that you want it to look. I also keyframed the scale of this layer to increase. This way it'll kind of like grow into the frame instead of just appearing. Then I went to the point where I want all the lines and circles and stuff to disappear and have it just be the energy ball. And I created some impact frames to serve as the transition between those moments. Essentially, all I'm really doing is creating a couple of adjustment layers that are displayed just for a few frames at a time. And I'm making the first one very bright, and then the second one very dark, and then the third one very bright again. And this kind of creates that flashing effect. And then after that flashing effect is over, I have everything but the energy ball itself disappear. Then I create another black solid and apply a lens flare to it. After doing that, I change the blending mode to add. I click on the flare center option and then line it up with the red projectile. On top of this, I apply a hue and saturation with the Colorize option checked in order to make the lens flare emit a red light. You can just mess around with the settings on both of these effects to make the red light as bright or dim as you want it to be. And then after the lens flare, I wanted to create like an energy effect that would emit from the red. And I did that by creating a new composition. You don't have to do this in a new composition, but I just thought it was a little easier to keep things organized. But similar to how I did earlier, I'm just applying turbulent noise to a black solid and then using effects to kind of warp that turbulent noise into what I want it to be. Okay, so I'm editing this video right now, and I just wanted to come in to clarify something here. Originally, I switched the blending mode of this layer to normal so that I could then switch it back to show you guys what to put it to. But when I switch it back, I actually switch it to the wrong thing. I switch it to classic color dodge instead of classic color burn, which is why it goes from looking like this to like this. So I just wanted to clarify that when you're done, the blending mode on this layer should be classic color burn. I apply a levels to adjust the colors and then a optics compensation to mess with the FOV of the shot and kind of make it compress inwards towards the center of the screen. I also go into the transform settings of the turbulent noise and keyframe the scale to go up. I should note that the blending mode of the black solid inside the pre-composition was set to classic color burn, and then the blending mode of the actual pre-composition was set to add. Then back in my main composition, I just applied a radial blur and some glow to these lines. I also turned down the opacity so that they were a little bit less visible. And then at the end, I actually duplicated the entire layer, rotated it 180 degrees, and then tweaked the colors a little bit just so that there were some slight differences of color in all the lines that were on the screen. So at this point, you should have pretty much the entire completed effect. I know I couldn't go into as much detail as I normally would. So if you have any more specific questions over something that maybe I didn't touch on in this video, feel free to leave a comment and I'll do my best to reply to all of them. And again, I'm going to have the project file in the description so you can go in there and take a look at the entire thing yourself just to see how I did everything. So I know it's been 2 years since I've really acknowledged this channel. Sorry about that. I've also been in college for the past 2 years. Good news though, I have a death battle video coming out soon that we are working on, and it's going to be the biggest project that we've really ever undertaken. So the matchup is going to be between Johnny Joestar and Satoru Gojo. So we're really excited about this, and we really hope you guys will also watch it when it comes out. So yeah, that's going to be all. I'll see you guys in the next one.